Greetings once again, friends. My name is Peter, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Consolation. As always, I thank you for taking the time to watch today, and I hope that you'll enjoy what you're about to see. Spring is almost upon us, and here in New England, we are grateful to see winter go away. It has been a rough past few weeks up here with a lot of snow, sub-zero cold, and just all around depressing weather, unless you like skiing, which I don't. But with spring, we can talk about the boys of summer, which leads to baseball. And I thought, what better way to celebrate spring than to talk about some of my favorite baseball games? Now, there's one catch with my particular list. The only way that the games could be on my list is if they were in my library. I have to own them. If I don't own them, I can't talk about them. That's the only rule. Gotta own it, and it's gotta be a baseball game. That's it. Pretty simple, right? So let's talk about my top five favorite baseball games in my library. Because hey, who doesn't like lists, right? Number 5. Super Bases Loaded for the SNES, published by Jaleco back in 1991. When you think baseball video games, you think of the same kind of objective. Win the game, win enough games to make the playoffs, and then win the playoffs and win whatever title is being offered. Super Bases Loaded by Jaleco takes this formula and changes it up. Now the objective is to play what they call the perfect baseball game, and that means making no mistakes. You start with 100 points. If you throw the ball to the wrong base, you lose some points. If a player in the field makes an error, you lose some points. If you get caught stealing, you lose some points. If you strike out at the plate, you lose some points. It's very easy to get docked points unless you play really what is a perfect baseball game. And this baseball game teaches you some of the basics so that if you actually take your game to the field and play it in real life, you'll understand that you can't make these mistakes, and these mistakes kind of add up to bigger problems for your team that they have to overcome. So that's really a neat idea. It thinks outside the box. The graphics are pretty good. The sound is good. The game's fun to play, and you can even edit your own team. So if you're having a tough time getting that perfect baseball game, edit one of the two teams. Give them full statistics. The game does not put any limits on it. Try and handcuff the other team. But I'll tell you, it's difficult to get a perfect game, and you'll find out for yourself if you play Super Bases Loaded. The number 5 favorite baseball game in my library. Let's go to number 4. Number 4 is Super Batter Up, published by Namco for the SNES. Now, you probably, or I should say you might not have heard of this game before. And it's a Namco baseball game. What's the big deal, right? What if I told you that this is the spiritual successor to the RBI baseball games on the NES? Interested? I would hope so. That's what this is. This is far, far better than Super RBI Baseball for the SNES, published by Time Warner Interactive, which is just an atrocity. This game is your RBI Baseball game and deserves a spot in any SNES owner's collection. The music is similar. The gameplay is similar. There are more teams to choose from. Some of the graphics are improved. And it's just fun to play. Plus, it has actual Major League Baseball players. Doesn't have the team license, but it has the player's license, which is kind of neat. Super Batter Up. It's cheap to find. It earns a spot in your library. And believe it or not, there are 3 games better than this somehow. This is number 4 on my list of favorite baseball games in my collection. Number 3. Super Baseball Simulator 1000, published by Culture Brain for the SNES. Super Baseball Simulator 1000 refines the ideas that were introduced in the original Baseball Simulator 1000 for the NES. The graphics and sound are improved. Simulating baseball games is no longer an arduous and tedious experience where you have to wait 7 to 10 minutes for a game to complete. And it still carries all of the fun from the original release. Special powers to be able to turn a batted ball into a bomb and blow up outfielders, or throw a fastball so fast that it cuts off the other player's bat. Powers like that are things that you can wield in this game if you desire. However, if you want to play a very straight-laced baseball game and really work the simulation part of the aspect of the game from the title. You can do that here by turning off those powers, and the game will track statistics for you: home runs, ERA, strikeouts, proper standings, and all of that is backed up to the internal battery on the cartridge. Super Baseball Simulator 1000 takes the NES game to a whole new level. It sounds like a marketing ploy, but I'm not kidding. It's that good. Buy it if you can. Number 3 on my list, Super Baseball Simulator 1000. Now, we're more than halfway in. I'm wearing an NES controller on my shirt. Pete, where are the NES games? I'm glad you asked, because we have 2 games to go, and they're both from my favorite system of all time. Number 2, RBI Baseball 2, published by Tengen for the NES. I could have picked the first game. After all, it's the game that most people know. Little cute, super deformed players, that music that just kind of buries its way into your brain. But this game does things a little bit better. For starters, the player models are a bit more realistic. Still cartoony, but at least they're more proportioned like human beings rather than little stubby weeble characters. And Weebles wobble, they don't fall down. That was the first game. This game, they're a bit more human looking. The other thing is that there are more teams to pick from. Not only the Major League Baseball teams from this particular year, but also World Series teams from years past, as well as All-Star teams. So you get to play against more teams and challenge your skills. This is really a much better version of the first game, just not as well known. So RBI Baseball 2, my number 2 favorite baseball game in my library. And to be fair, if RBI Baseball 3 were in my library, that would be what's here. But this is the one I have, aside from the first game, so that's number 2. Before I get to number 1, listing some games that didn't quite make the cut. Base Wars from Konami, for example, is a great mix-up between Cyberball from Atari, the robots, and baseball. It's a fun game to play with really good music. Of course, it's that traditional Konami quality, but to me just didn't quite make the cut. Also, the Baseball Stars games, which a lot of people enjoy. Certainly, stat tracking is cool, and being able to hire and fire players is definitely a plus. To me, though, the game is just a little bit more difficult, and the learning curve is just a little bit more steep than other baseball games on my list. So it didn't quite make the cut. And the game that just missed, and I mean just missed the number 5 spot, is World Series Baseball for the Genesis from Sega. That has both the MLB and MLB Players Association licenses. So you get the stadiums, the players, and the teams. And I don't know what it was. It was really a difficult decision between that and Super Bases Loaded. And I went with Super Bases Loaded because it did things a little bit differently rather than sticking with the tried and true just win the game mentality. So those are the honorable mentions: Baseball Stars, Base Wars, and World Series Baseball. So let's get to number 1, my favorite baseball game in my library, and if we're being honest, my favorite baseball game of all time. Number 1. Bad News Baseball, published by Tecmo for the NES. Not all baseball games have to take themselves seriously. And let's be honest, if we can for a minute, any game that has a bunny for an umpire probably isn't going to take itself very seriously. But that's okay, because what this game does well is it just plays a very simplified game of baseball. No field shifting, not a lot of player substitution, not extra button presses or too much strategy. It's just you and the other player, each controlling 9 players on a team. Let's see who wins. There's probably a little bit too much power in this game. It's very easy, even with the first batter on a lot of teams, to hit one out of the park, but it's very satisfying to do nonetheless. The cutscenes are great. The music is fantastic, Tecmo fare. The game is not all that expensive to get, and it really is just really my favorite baseball game of all time. I don't really know how many other words I can put on it, but I enjoy it very, very much, and I think that you would too if it was in your library. So number 1, Bad News Baseball, published by Tecmo for my favorite system of all time, the NES. So it's your turn. If you'd like to, in the comments below, I'd love to hear what your top 5 baseball games are of all time. Now, there is a catch. It can only be 5. No honorable mentions. You got to hold it to 5. And if you think about the fact that there have been so many baseball games released over the last 35 years, the list is huge. So trying to narrow it down to just 5 is a pretty daunting challenge, as long as you like sports games. If not, it might be easier for you. But please, leave them in the comments below, or if you want to send me an email with your list or with comments about the show, Pete@Consoleation.com. Again, that's Pete, P-E-T-E, @Consoleation.com. And the best comments or best lists might find their way into a blog post on Consoleation.com in the near future. I hope that you enjoyed this first Consolation video. It was fun to shoot it. Look for more in the weeks to come. But until then, thanks for watching, everybody, and until the next time, take care.